Typically within product management, the teams are smaller to begin with. So I think engineering teams hit this barrier much faster than product folks. I think the challenge that product leaders face is it can be hard to get the hires approved soon enough to get out of the individual contributor work and actually focus on leading. That's the bigger challenge with early stage product leadership in my experience.
What's the smallest company that you've joined?
I would say when the team's probably between 12 and 15 is generally when I've come in. Like I said, typically the seed stage, the founders are driving product, right? And so you're coming in once the Series A is happening or right before that. And that's typically the stage where you're going from that 10 people to 30 or 50 people. So that's generally when you're coming in, is in that point.
And what's usually the size of an engineering team when you're coming in as that first product hire? How many engineers are already put in place?
Yeah, great question. It's probably between 5 and 10. You typically have like a director of engineering that's there, and you've got a team of 5 to 10, depending on the company. And that gets to be the point where it's too much for the founders to manage, too much for the director of engineering to manage. And that's where they start to feel the pain of, okay, we need to bring somebody in here to kind of run with the product side of things.
And have you been a leader of people resources?
Yeah.
What's the size of teams that you've led, just for some context?
Sure. A lot of times it's really interesting coming in as a leader in these startup organizations because you typically come in as the only product person. And typically the impulse within the company is to hire more engineers, right? Because you want to build more features, right? So what happens is you come in as an individual contributor leader, basically, and then over time you start to add 1, 2, 3 people to your teams. And so I've been able to have teams with 3 or 4 people on them, but it doesn't normally start that way. You start very hands-on, and then you start to layer in people as the company grows and the size of the engineering team grows.
Is there a number in your mind where you feel as a people leader, you kind of max out and you don't have enough bandwidth to serve those folks?
Great question. In terms of the engineering pods, I'd like to keep those small. But in terms of the actual product management organization, typically in the early stages, you don't ever hit that max point, right? I think most of the studies say you shouldn't have more than 7 direct reports or something like that. Typically within product management, the teams are smaller to begin with. So I think engineering teams hit this barrier much faster than product folks. I think the challenge that product leaders face is it can be hard to get the hires approved soon enough to get out of the individual contributor work and actually focus on leading. That's the bigger challenge with early stage product leadership in my experience.
Have you been with a startup that's gone to acquisition?
I have been a part of companies that have exited, but I've not generally been there when they've been acquired. It's actually a really good point that different people come in and add value at certain stages. So knowing where you play is really important. For example, I come in at that kind of late seed or early Series A, and we'll stick with the company through Series B. After that, it really depends, right? The company starts to evolve for that next stage. And so sometimes places where you came in and added a ton of value, it's maybe not as interesting or even in your wheelhouse to really move to that next stage. That's something to keep in mind too, that you always want to have openness to, hey, I'm here to serve for as long as I'm useful. And to also know too, that there's nothing wrong with moving on to the next thing and allowing somebody to take that next leg of the journey.
Yeah, it's a pretty selfless thing, right? I mean, I'm not going to say like you're firing yourself, but you're being very upfront with the owner and saying there's somebody that's going to be a better fit for this Series B round that you're going to come in with. So
yeah, and the reality is that's going to happen either way, right? So as the company changes and grows, it needs different things. And so that role is going to change. The role that you have as even a Series A product leader is different than the role at a Series C product leader. Either you have to make the choice that you're going to become that, right? And you're going to transition into that role, or you just decide that you really like this particular stage and you're excited to hand off the baton to the next person. The role will change. The question is, are you planning to anticipate that, right? And have those proactive conversations? Because at the end of the day, we want these startups to be successful. And so you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to make that work.
That's great. Well, Josh, thanks for spending time with us. This has been fantastic intel for those product folks looking to explore the early stage startup market.
Cool, man. Well, thanks, Tim. I'll catch you later.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Take care. If you enjoyed this discussion with Josh, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe to get more insight interviews like this one.